Hey, good evening, people. I'm going to talk about a subject that nobody online wants to talk about. And frankly, I was kind of really apprehensive to even cover this because I did want to cover things that people aren't talking about, don't want to talk about, and are too fearful to talk about. Let me go ahead and roll this disclaimer out because tonight is going to be kind of dark.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Yes, tonight I'm going to be covering The horrors of involuntary termination. Now, it sounds like oxymoron when I talk about this. Involuntarily terminating yourself, yet we can't even say the word on YouTube. I've had to put an asterisk, 2 asterisks with the real word that I want to use, because accurately, that's what these people are accused of doing. Yet when you challenge the system, when you challenge the status quo, when you challenge bigger entities, somehow you happen to have bad accidents that happen. Tonight, I'm going to go over very controversial, prolific cases that have happened in U.S. history and even recent histories. We just had a recent inventor in Alabama, a young black inventor who invented, I think it was like plastic, like fuel from plastic to have a running vehicle. The kid ended up missing. We're not covering missing person cases. We're covering self-deletion cases, and that's very problematic. Let's say that I ended up, because this is very recent, that we're having this fuel shortage right now, that we're saying we're having fuel shortage with the Strait of Hormuz being blocked. You know, there's this whole big issue with that. Let's say that I create free energy, 0 point energy. Let's say I challenge the status quo on black operations that happen. No, I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about black projects. And next thing you know, men at my door knock in black suits and tell me to shut up about it, or bad things will happen. We're going to cover this and a whole lot more tonight. The whole stating of me having to preface this and say, if anything happens, I didn't KILL myself, has to be said before I even start this podcast. We're going to cover everything. And when I say everything, we're covering everything from Epstein to Gary Williamson to everybody. Scientists who ended up creating projects and ended up becoming missing persons, to people who shot themselves in the back of the head twice and it was labeled a self-deletion. People who ratted out on the US government about the CIA bringing drugs into this country, shooting themselves twice in the chest. How is this possible? How can somebody shoot themselves in the back of the head twice and it be deemed a self-deletion? Somehow people that report or become whistleblowers end up drinking poison on purpose and leave these articulate self-deletion notes about how to do this when their relatives have said that they wanted to live and they've applied that they were going to end up missing days later. Are they clairvoyant people? I don't think this is the case. I know this is a very dark subject, and I'm going to be talking about everything. This is a topic that most people are too nervous to talk about. I don't really care. And of course, I do have to say, if anything happens to me and I end up having a heart attack, an aneurysm, or something crazy, well, maybe we could just say it's a coincidence, because I just happen to be talking about these topics right now. So let's begin. This is going to be a crazy podcast. Tonight, we talk about the ones who mysteriously and voluntarily delete themselves. No note, no history of despair, just a clean, convenient ending that ties up every loose thread the powerful don't want untangled. One day, they're asking the wrong questions. The next day, they're gone. Ruled a self-deletion, because I can't say this damn word because of our language tone policing YouTube, before the body even cools. It's been called a self-deletion. And here's the part they don't want you to be hearing. If you start digging into these cases, it becomes dangerous to keep breathing. If I ask questions, all of a sudden breathing is going to be a hard thing, or living is going to be a very tough thing, or I'm going to be highly accident prone. Maybe I should stay away from windows covering this podcast days after doing this. So let me say it now, loud and clear. For the record, if anything happens to me, if I'm found hanging or floating face down or with a to my head, I never owned. Well, I mean, it's in a lock safe. But anyways, you already know the truth. I didn't KILL myself. They did. Welcome to the show. What a crazy introduction, by the way. Never thought I had to make an introduction like that, but You know what? It's par for the course when you cover things like this. I have to say this. Just say it right now. This is the silence protocol that we're going to talk about.
Bij Stanley Meyer, nu buiten zijn garage.
Let me go ahead and magnify this real quick so everybody can see this. We're going to dive deep into Exhibit A right now.
En hebben net zijn water-powered auto naar buiten gereden.
So let me set up the scene right now. This man right here is a local scientist, entrepreneur, creative damn genius. Right before you, you see a water-powered car. Do you think that this would probably threaten fuel industries? Right? We're gonna go ahead and listen a little bit more.
Right.
Mind you, they told you that these were tragic coincidences. A whistleblower hangs himself with a bed sheet that couldn't possibly hold his weight. An investigative journalist vanishes from a crowded street and washes up 3 states away with a self-deletion note in perfect handwriting that they never used. A scientist who dared publish the forbidden data is now found dead in his own locked car, engine running, carbon monoxide, except the car was electric. They all had one big thing in common. They challenged the wrong throne. They spoke truth to power so loudly that the truth in power decided only safe reply was silence. And the silence always comes the same way. A quiet disappearance, suddenly self-deletion, a story that ends the moment it threatens to expose the machine. This is not paranoia. This is a pattern. Tonight we name the names. Just like my mic tried to cut out right there. So, because if they can make the loudest voices disappear, how long before they come for the ones who are only listening? You're not supposed to be here, chat, just to let you guys know. But you are. And once you hear what comes next, you can never unhear it. This is the silence protocol. Turn the lights low, lock the doors. They're already listening. Let's begin.
Er nu wat over gediscussieerd wordt. En er zijn dingen aan gewijzigd en zo. Dus dat kan op het moment niet lopen, maar we mogen het dus wel helemaal bekijken.
Look at what we're seeing here. Water-powered car. This is real, ladies and gentlemen. This is real footage. Looks like VHS. Yes, you're looking at a water-powered car. Genius stuff, by the way. Just imagine if we never had to pay the fuel prices that we have now. You just fuel up with water, bro. That's it. Right? Oh, and I got a really juicy one. This guy who challenged the Obama-Biden administration ended up banging himself in the chest twice. And they ruled it as self-deletion because he challenged the Obama administration. That's later on. But right now we're going to cover this scientist who ended up mysteriously offing himself after he created a source of free energy. Look at this. It says water-powered car. We're going to go around the vehicle and take a look. And then, of course, Jesus Christ is Lord written on the car. So obviously this guy was a Christian. A Christian who came up with an H2O driven car, fueled car. You know, it's a running theme right now. They're doing this mass killing of Christians in other parts of the world, and this guy happened to be a Christian coming up with a fuel that was water for water-powered cars. This Christian ended up self-deleting, even though self-deletion's against our Christian ethic and belief system. Look at that. What a wonder this is. Wow.
Just explaining how this thing does.
Now he's going to go into how this water power car works a little bit. I'm going to let him talk. Rest in peace. This guy paid the ultimate price, and I'm going to provide the findings after this on his death and demonstrate what has happened to this man.
Yeah, can you zoom in back in here?
Look at this.
Are we on?
Here we go.
Yeah. Okay, now this is the hydrogen computer system, which was designed in order to be able to process the fuel, to produce the hydrogen gas from water and do it economically and be able to control its firing, going in the engine to allow the Volkswagen engine to run off of hydrogen. There's a lot engineering design that went into this, even though that this is our systems engineering approach. The hydrogen computer system you see here will be miniaturized down to several IC chips, which will allow us to give the economics to apply to a conventional car. Over here, there's very unique design features that had to be developed in order to develop the water fuel cell as a retrofit energy.
Think about this. They have a water fuel cell. Right now, I'm going to diesel mechanic school or diesel tech school to become a diesel tech. This would blow the minds of every instructor we have at school right now. Matter of fact, this would literally threaten all the diesel fuel industry components of the industrial complex that we have, like ExxonMobil, Shell Corporation, all these other corporations that we have. I mean, think about it. This is such a huge, massive threat. And of course, obviously, this guy somehow ended up self-deleting. It's weird, right?
These systems to conventional cars. We had to go ahead and develop the laser, what we call the laser distributor, as you see right here, which is put between the conventional rotor cap and that of the rotor assembly. And primarily what this does, this sets up the electronic signals that goes back and triggers the computer system in order to allow the car to run successfully on hydrogen. In order to run.
Now, just think about it. This is the guy who invented the water-powered car. He said before, if anything happens, I did not KILL myself. This is the inventor, the genius Christian mind who came up with this. So Christianity and science go hand in hand if you look historically as well too. But moving forward, Christian man, we don't believe in self-deleting ourselves. It goes against our Christian ethos. This man, Christian scientist, this is him, the actual guy.
On this engine off of water, we've also had to learn the ability to adjust the burn rate of hydrogen to co-equal the fossil fuels. We did this by simply now pulling off a portion of the exhaust gas that's coming from the engine, as you see through this tube here, that's going through this electronic regulator that's hooked up to the hydrogen computer. And basically what's happening is that as the ambient air is going into the engine and going through the burning process, it produces the non-combustible gases that retards the speed by which the oxygen atom unites to hydrogen and bring on gas ignition.
Now, I know a lot of people, can watch this and they probably might not understand a damn thing he's saying, but just understand that hydrogen is so powerful, and he'll explain it later, that it powers damn near everything when it comes to the automobile industry, except for electric cars to some degree, right? Because we have hybrids out there. So
by simply using the non-combustible gases coming from the exhaust of the engine, we now modulate and control the speed by which that oxygen unites with the hydrogen, and therefore we are adjusting the burn rate of hydrogen to co-equal that of gasoline or fossil fuels or even diesel fuel.
Yeah, he's just saying that this would be a one-to-one when it comes to water powering fuel sources instead of gasoline and fossil fuels.
And that gave us the number one retrofit capabilities of retrofitting the water fuel cell technology to an existing engine. And we do this electronically. The unit that you see right here, we call this a gas processor. And basically what we're doing is we're ionizing the ambient air gases that is now going into the process. And this allows us to trigger and use the hydrogen fracturing technology and tapping into a higher energy yield coming from the hydrogen. The unit you see right here, this is referred to as a resonant.
So here we go. This is the next part where he makes these statements for you laymen out there that don't work on cars or understand much about cars. You just maybe put fuel in there, and if a light comes on, you have a mechanic checkup on this. This is really rudimentary for you guys. And he'll explain this in really simple terms, how amazing this is and what a threat to the fuel industry this would be.
So what you're really seeing with the water fuel cell as it is today is that we have a full system engineering approach, allowing us now to use water as a main fuel source to be able to run a conventional engine and run it on water and do it and equal or supersede the performance of a car running on gasoline and diesel fuel. Many people do not realize that when you run a car or truck on either gasoline or diesel fuel, you're actually running it on hydrogen. And all we're doing is using the hydrogen from water. And under the National Bureau of Standards figures shows that when you use water, the energy release is roughly 2.5 times more powerful than that of gasoline. So water is a very powerful fuel.
Wow. He said water is a powerful fuel. Hydrogen is found in water. What's also found in gasoline, right? So here's the synopsis of, the totality of what basically happened. The final moments while dining with his brother and two Belgian investors. Coincidentally, he's with some investors, right? For this invention for water. Meyer reportedly drank cranberry juice. Then he rushed outside and stated, "They've poisoned me." Now, let's look at the next statement that I put down. Why would he say any of this? Conspiracy theories. Due to the nature of his invention, which challenged oil-based energy industries, theories persist that he was assassinated to suppress his technology. Somehow, the tech that he had, the vehicle that he had, and all this ended up missing after his death. Nobody knows where this car went. Nobody knows where any of this, like the data sheets he had and all that, came up missing too. Investor reaction. His brother Steven claimed the investors present showed no surprise or empathy at all, fueling suspicions, though one investor described Meyer as a friend and denied the allegations. Crazy work. This guy just deleted himself and he's gone. The guy's gone. You know, if this guy had left and sold this to the investors and they went through with this and he never passed away and the investors weren't complicit on this, maybe we'd have a water-powered car industry. But you know what? I don't even think it would have gotten that far. Maybe there would have been more mysterious deaths that happened, but who knows? Moving on, though.
Good morning and welcome back. Here's an eyebrow raiser. A second Boeing whistleblower, now dead after experiencing a brief illness. This comes after Joshua Dean expressed concerns over manufacturing issues with the company's 737 MAX planes.
And he was the second person who involuntarily terminated himself. Two whistleblowers ended up terminating themselves involuntarily, mysteriously. This is one out of two of the cases that ended up big time on the news.
Madeline Rivera is live with the latest on this. Madeline.
Hey, good morning, Guy. Joshua Dean's family says this all happened very quickly. The 45-year-old died Tuesday after an agonizing 2 weeks in critical condition, rather. His aunt tells the Seattle Times Dean started having trouble breathing. He was intubated, got pneumonia, and then MRSA. Before he died, doctors were considering amputating his hands and feet, but he was too weak for surgery. His attorney says Josh's passing is a loss to the aviation community and the flying public. He possessed tremendous courage to stand up for what he felt was true and right and raise quality and safety issues. Dean used to work as a quality inspector for Spirit Aerosystems, a Boeing supplier. He was fired in April 2023. He said it was in retaliation for flagging safety concerns regarding the 737 MAX plane. Dean was mentioned as part of a shareholder lawsuit against Spirit in which he alleged Spirit would throw pizza parties to celebrate a drop in the number of problems. But he said Spirit undercounted the defects instead of actually reducing them. The death of Dean comes just weeks after the death of John Barnett. Barnett was a Boeing whistleblower who local authorities say shot and killed himself March 9th. Barnett was also in the middle of a lawsuit claiming he was wrongfully terminated by Boeing after accusing the company of covering up defects with the 787 Dreamliner.
And that is big business. Notice how whistleblowers come out of the woodwork for safety issues. Now, the company may think, oh, well, we don't want to have to recall this. You know, save time and energy, just off this guy. Maybe, who knows? But somehow in the midst of this guy somehow involuntarily self-deleted himself. That's what I'm saying.
Boeing and Spirit are under a lot of scrutiny after a door panel flew off an Alaska Airlines plane in midair in January. In March, the FAA gave Boeing 90 days to come up with an action plan to fix quality control issues.
Gary Webb, rest in peace. Crazy. Rest in peace to the first person who was a Christian inventor. These are really crazy cases. It's going to get crazier, ladies and gentlemen, as we push forward.
How a man shot himself in the head and then did it again.
Yeah. Like I said, I had to blur out the GUN in the picture in the video because, of course, YouTube, once again, so much limited speech on this. Like, I can't even show the picture because it's relevant to the topic. It's just crazy. But like the guy said in the intro, how a man shot himself in the head and then did it again somehow. But this was ruled as self-deletion. This guy somehow self-deleted himself. There's also a case, I think it's in Brazil or Cuba, where this guy challenged the government and somehow the next day ended up shooting himself in the back of the head twice, and they ruled it as self-deletion as well. Crazy.
December 10th, 2004, a moving company arrives at a modest house in Carmichael, California. On the door, they find a handwritten note. It says, "Please do not enter. Call 911 and ask for an ambulance." Inside, police find a body of 49-year-old Gary Webb. The coroner's report was swift and definitive. But for thousands of people watching the case, the official ruling was an insult to intelligence. Why? Because Gary Webb died from 2 gunshot wounds to the head. How does a man shoot himself in the head and then do it again? The authorities had an explanation. But Gary Webb wasn't just any depressed man. He was a journalist who had exposed one of the darkest secrets of the American government, and many believe his death wasn't suicide.
Oh, I thought I deleted that word. Damn it. Got to go back and edit that. I went ahead and tried to edit a lot of this and take those words out. Maybe show it on the screen, but not have them say it. I try to do this in the editing process. Like, apparently I just didn't do a good enough job. But anyways, yeah.
It was a final act of silencing a whistleblower. To understand his death, we have to go back 8 years to 1996. Gary Webb was an investigative reporter for the San Jose Mercury News. He stumbled onto a lead that seemed too wild to be true. He spent a year digging, following a trail of money and cocaine from the jungles of Nicaragua Strait to the streets of South Central Los Angeles. In August 96, he published his 3-part.
And just think, if I'm challenging the CIA and exposing the government for flooding the streets with cocaine and other drugs, that is a massive implication. And this reporter unearthed all the facts, receipts, and details on this. This is one of the guys who ended up offing himself. It's just funny how this happens. What a coincidence.
Part series, Dark Alliance. The premise was explosive. Webb alleged that during the 1980s, CIA-backed Contra rebels in Nicaragua were trafficking massive amounts of cocaine into the U.S. to fund their war against communism. Even worse, Webb suggested the CIA knew about it and looked the other way. The very government claiming to fight the war on drugs was effectively protecting suppliers who ignited the crack epidemic in black communities. The story was an earthquake. The nascent internet lit up. Protests erupted in Los Angeles. Gary Webb had spoken truth to ultimate power. When you attack the intelligence community, the backlash is swift. But the conspiracy against Gary Webb didn't just come from the CIA. It came from his own peers. In an unprecedented move, the titans of media, the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, the New York Times, didn't try to advance Webb's story. They launched a coordinated attack to destroy it. They nitpicked his sourcing. They claimed he overstated the CIA's direct involvement.
And here's the problem, though. Whenever you challenge the government, whenever you challenge big entities, systems, corporations, or big structures, there are going to be people who are also fearful and not wanting to speak up. Instead of telling you to shush or be quiet, they're going to challenge you because maybe they just want to play along and do the right thing when really they should have asked questions and said, well, show me your receipts. Where's the proof? Right? Just asking this, just say, hey, I'm not asking to challenge you or just deny anything you're saying. I'm just asking purely just to find out. I mean, if you're a reporter and you're unveiling this, we want to see the truth too. They could have approached him like this, but from what this person saying, the way that they approached them was to kind of shut him up and tell him, hey, it's not true. That's not right. Challenging and rebutting him are one thing. Silencing him by just kind of making a mockery of just hitting him with all these questions by telling him you're just a lunatic is crazy.
They devoted more ink to discrediting Webb than they ever did to investigating drug running by CIA assets. Why?
Yeah, discrediting him. And that's what I'm talking about. They're trying to discredit him, right? Because maybe they don't want to mysteriously end up falling out of a window or having a bad traffic accident like Princess Diana, things like this. There's so many conspiracies around this topic. It's crazy. Like I had to shorten this to make it within an hour because there's so many deaths that have happened that were involuntary self-determinations that we can cover. But I just wanted to cover some compelling ones to go over. And trust me, nobody else wants to touch this, but I guess I'm going to cover this topic tonight.
Some say professional jealousy. Others say these major papers acted as gatekeepers, protecting the establishment they relied on for access. The pressure worked. His own newspaper, the Mercury News, buckled and retracted support for the story. Gary Webb was transferred to a dead-end bureau, marginalized, and eventually forced out of journalism entirely. He had told the truth, and it cost him his career. By 2004, Webb was divorced, struggling financially, and unable to get a job at a major newspaper. His friends admit he was deeply depressed. When he was found dead, the Sacramento County coroner ruled. They explained the 2 shots.
You know how I just took the word out and edited that for this podcast? So evidently one of them slipped through, but let's continue.
Theory. The first shot, entering near his ear, passed through his cheek and wasn't immediately fatal. The second shot did the job.
That's what they're saying. But it's physically impossible to shoot in most cases, 99.9% of cases, it's impossible for you to shoot yourself in the head twice. Like you shoot yourself the first time, I don't know. It's just crazy. The pain would be so much. Maybe there would be some damage and then you can't follow. Like who does that? But that's what they're saying. This guy shot himself in the head twice. And they called it a self-deletion.
It is physically possible, but highly improbable. Conspiracy theorists point to the timing. Just years prior, a CIA internal investigation finally admitted that, yes, they did work with assets who were known drug traffickers.
And they came out with the truth after that. You know, lo and behold, maybe they just didn't want the truth to surface that time. So possibly maybe this guy was silenced. And then eventually, after a request for the truth to come out, they were like, we'll talk about it because it's old news. Well, possibly this guy didn't commit self-deletion, but that's what they said during the time. And then it's crazy when the truth comes out later on. It's like, you guys just possibly off somebody. Like, this is just insane because you guys are you flooded the nation with crack and cocaine. Then you guys just want to silence somebody? Maybe.
Webb was largely vindicated years too late. Did someone decide he was still a loose end? Was the humiliation not enough? His ex-wife, Sue Bell, said Gary had told her weeks before his death that he was being followed. He said, "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident." Today,
That's what I'm saying. Before these deaths, these people say, you know what? I think these people are going to try to delete me. Gary Webb said somebody's following him. Next thing you know, he had to make this statement, and then he just mysteriously offed himself. Funny how this works out when people challenge the status quo or systems.
the Dark Alliance is widely accepted as a flawed but essential piece of journalism that exposed a horrifying reality of U.S. foreign policy. Whether Gary Webb died by his own hand, broken by the machine that crushed him, or whether he was murdered to send a final message, the result is the same. The man who exposed the darkest alliance in modern American history was silenced. And the question remains, in a world of deep state secrets, what is the real price of the truth?
So here we go. Cause of death: while 2 shots are unusual in a self-deletion, the coroner found it a distinct possibility and confirmed the ruling. Crazy. 2 shots to the head. This is so insane. All right, let me take myself out of this picture so we can read this. Suicide. Gosh, I can't even say. Almost said it fully. Self-deletion notes. Webb left self-deletion notes for his family, which, according to reports, mentioned he was in a lot of pain and had lost the ability to write or work as a journalist. It's hard to tell what to believe because of the timing when these things happen. Not just the timing, but like, just funny how this happens. Like, also there's another case where this guy banged himself in the back of the head with a pew. Like, I don't even know how that's even possible, but they ruled that a self-deletion as well too. Let's continue. It's crazy.
The Muslim Brotherhood, the moderate organization that this administration chose to ally itself with. I was told to remove all unauthorized references to terrorism. I can't explain to you the ideology or the worldview of this administration that makes them so adamant to protect Islam.
A Department of Homeland Security whistleblower is found dead.
Haney was found dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound in Amador County over the weekend.
This guy challenged the Obama administration and said that he was in cahoots with Islam. Now, next thing you know, this guy, for some reason, happened to off himself. Big, massive conspiracy. He was going to release files that he had stored on a zip drive. Right before he was going to do this, bang, bang. Coincidentally, and the zip drive came up missing. Oddly enough, really, really crazy stuff. All right, let me start this super chat goal, just a measly $20. All right, I know you guys can do it out there. $20, that's it. Not a lot of money. Maybe enough for a college kid to get some ramen. But hey, anything helps because I don't have a water-powered car like I was saying earlier.
And this is an icon of the Tablighi Jamaat movement. One of the largest in the world outside of the United States is called the Army of Darkness. I began a TDY assignment meaning temporary duty at the National Targeting Center in November of 2011. Within 6 months, we had instituted 1,200 law enforcement actions on the case that we had started. During the course of this work, I was given a commendation letter for finding 300 terrorists related to this case, just that case.
But a year into that investigation, Haney says they got a visit from the State Department and the Homeland Security Civil Rights Division, who said that tracking these groups and individuals was, quote, problematic because they were Islamic groups.
In March of 2012, the State Department, in cooperation with Janet Napolitano, Department of Homeland Security, shut the case down, despite all the evidence and the good work that we were doing. Subsequently, I went back home.
Yeah, of course, Janet Napolitano would be associated in allowing this shutdown to continue, especially when he had all the facts on this case. You know, it's crazy when people are starting to make some headway on something and it ends up exposing either the government, corporations, establishments, people like this. They end up getting shut down. Or, like I said, these people mysteriously have bad accidents or end up committing self-termination.
To my home port, and I created a component of the Tablighi Jamaat case called the Institute of Islamic Education. While I finished the case up, I put it in the system. There were 67 records related to the case, individuals and organizations. Within about 2 weeks after I put the case into the system, I went on vacation and I was called from my colleague and said that they had removed the records entirely from the system. They didn't just modify them, they completely obliterated them, took them out. Those are the records related to the network of mosques and organizations operating in the United States that is linked to the San Bernardino shooting.
Why would they erase the records? Why would they ever do this? Gee, I wonder why. It's a very bad look for that administration during the time to eliminate and delete these records.
And to the Orlando shooting.
Haney believes if his work had been allowed to continue, it may have thwarted last week's attack.
Therefore, two things very plausibly would have happened. Either Syed would have been put on the no-fly list because of association with that mosque shooting, and/or the K-1 visa that his wife was given may have been denied because of his affiliation with a known organization.
They could have saved so many lives because of this. This man was trying to save some lives and somehow he was silenced. They took the records and scrubbed them.
You did your job and other people did their jobs, and in comes the Obama administration and they wipe out all the work that could have potentially saved the lives of Americans. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it's a fair statement.
And yes, that is a total fair statement. When the Obama administration wants to undo the hard work of exposing jihadists, extreme Islamists who want to come here and delete a bunch of Americans, that's crazy. But I don't think that this is like far from extreme imaginative, like things that we could just concoct out of thin air. Like, this is crazy. And so let's just continue.
Not only did they remove the records, but they also investigated me. They said essentially that I did not have the authority to put those records into the system, even though I had been commended by the National Targeting Center.
Was commended. Your research on the Tablighi Jamaat initiative has assisted the identification of over 300 persons with possible connections to terrorism. He was commended. But then he was saying by 3 organizations from the government started an investigation on him. So he must have been a massive threat.
For finding 300 terrorists. So essentially the last 3 years of my career, I was under investigation by 3 different government agencies, all
3 government agencies
at the same time. They determined that I was essentially more of a threat than these terrorist groups.
That's wild. This one man was more of a threat than the terrorist groups that he sought to eliminate and take off the map by exposing them. And then what the government did was they came in and scrubbed the records. This is a very interesting case of another guy who ended up committing involuntary self-termination.
At the end of my career, I was relieved of my service weapon. All access to text was cut off and suspended. My secret clearance was revoked, and I was sequestered for 11 months while the results of 3 simultaneous investigations from 3 different branches of the government were concluded. In July of 31 of last year, I retired honorably.
After his retirement in 2015, Haney knew he needed to share his story with the American public. When he saw the news of the San Bernardino shooting and
here we go. This guy's going to keep talking, and the governments or whatever dark entities are behind the curtain are like, we got to shut this guy up.
Its connection to the Tablighi Jamaat case, this only increased his resolve.
And in the morning that the news broke, and they showed the picture of the man, Syed Farouk, and his wife, Tashfeen Malik, and then showed the mosque that he went to, Darul al-Islamiyah, I felt like I got struck by a bolt of lightning. And I sat up and yelled at the screen, "That's my case!" Because it was the Tablighi Jamaat. I knew it like that. And that set off a whole sequence of events that is still going on to this very day.
This guy could have saved a ton of American lives. Saved all these lives, but the government or whatever entities decided to off. Well, according to them, he offed himself. But this guy wanted to save American lives. But all the records were scrubbed and his work was dismantled.
It's really what led me to you today.
In February of 2016, Haney wrote an op-ed for The Hill entitled, "DHS ordered me to scrub records of Muslims with terror ties." Conservative media outlets reported on his story, while the mainstream media mostly ignored him. Haney was labeled anti-Muslim by left-wing groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Of course, left liberals would say that he's anti-Muslim and Islamophobe. They use all that. They use a lot of shame on their end to go ahead and do this because they want to promote anything but conservative values or anything but the Republican Party or anything that, like, I would say upholds Christian values. Well, I mean, Orthodox Christian values mainly, or anything else that promotes what their agenda is.
But no one has ever disputed the accuracy of any of his claims. In May of 2016, Haney published a book about his experiences entitled "See Something, Say Nothing."
And this guy right now is on track for somehow self-deleting. Of course. How many people in dark corners of the infrastructure, whatever infrastructure this may involve, is this pissing off?
A Homeland Security officer exposes the government's submission to jihad. The book is a detailed expose of what he learned during his career.
Damn. Look at what happened. Look, bro, this is going to happen. We already knew, chat, that this was going to happen. Oh, man. Obama DHS whistleblower found dead with a wound, a G-shot wound in California. DHS whistleblower Philip Haney dead in Amador County. Yeah. Of course, during the Obama era, because he wanted to challenge the Obama administration.
A Department of Homeland Security whistleblower is found dead. The Amador County Sheriff's Office in Northern California locating Philip Haney's body yesterday. The coroner's office says he died of a single self-inflicted gunshot wound. Authorities say the investigation is active and ongoing.
Everything we saw on scene is consistent with somebody putting a gun to themselves and pulling the trigger. Now, we're not making a statement that this was in fact.
Previous reports did indicate Haney's death was a suicide, but deputies haven't made that determination as of yet. His body was found in a car in this park and ride that's along Highway 16. It's less than 3 miles from where he lived in an RV park.
Every death that occurs in the county, when it comes to something like this, we treat and look at it as a homicide until we prove otherwise.
So you have a man that was planning to get married, a man who was very devout in his Christian faith, a man who had, a lot of incredible projects in the works, including this new book.
And notice, this is the second Christian man who self-deleted himself. People who say that they'll never do this because it goes against their Christian faith, but somehow they committed involuntary self-termination.
That he planned to bring forward, and suddenly, Friday morning, he's dead of a gunshot wound.
I can't be convinced that Phil Haney committed. I knew him too well. I've talked to at least a dozen of his close friends since that period of time that also said the same thing. The instant the news hit them, they knew that Phil had already prepared us to know that he would never commit.
It's hard for me to believe that it was a suicide. We had talked about it. We had a mutual pact. If it said either one of us end up having committed, then the other is going to make sure that truth wins out. He was working on a second book where he did name names.
Other facts that raise suspicion, according to Gomert, a thumb drive containing sensitive government information about Islamic extremists and national security that Haney always wore around his neck was missing at the scene of his death more than a month ago.
And he had a thumb drive with a lot of data on it, I don't know how many gig it was, hanging on a lanyard around his neck. And I understood that that information was also deposited in a remote location or two or more. So that was his insurance policy, that he wouldn't be killed.
On July 22nd,
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of edit this out because there was a copyright violation. This guy's right now talking about this investigation that happened where the coroners ruled this a self-deletion. Now, do you guys believe this or not? Because I don't believe any of this was happening as far as like a self-deletion. No, I don't believe this. This is just insane. And of course, here's his wife. The YouTube will demonetize me if I play this because it's his wife in the background saying that she doesn't believe. And according to her, well, no, it was his fiance. They were going to get married. She was going to marry this man. And then he had a second book and it was going to release this thumb drive with all this information. And then somehow he ended up offing himself. He had all these plans ahead of him and everything else. This is crazy. And here she's describing all of this, everything that he had ahead of him. And then somehow he self-deletes himself. The man who was challenging the government and the entities. So she goes over all this. Whistleblower found dead, of course, it says. So the reason why it's quiet right now in this video is because according to YouTube, the music in the background was copyrighted music that they played like in the back. I wish they wouldn't like do this so that way we can hear what she's saying. But let's go ahead and fast forward just a tad bit. See if we can get
by his appearance.
Here we go. Here's another case. So the next case of self-deletion that we're going to go with is somebody else who challenged big government, big systems, and it ended up involuntarily self-terminating. Yeah. Former U.S. official's death in California ruled a self-termination.
By his appearance before the Foreign Affairs Select.
And this is another guy who committed involuntary self-deletion. Somehow, he had an accident. These people that believe that they would never do this to themselves, some of them Christian men, it goes against their faith, somehow committed involuntary self-deletion when they challenged big government or other entities.
Committee in July 2003. The suspicion was Weapons Inspector Dr. David Kelly was the source revealing government intelligence on Iraq had been sexed up.
I reckon you're chaff. You've been thrown up to divert our probing. You ever felt like a fall guy? I mean, you've been set up, haven't you?
A man under pressure. He'd once said, "I will probably be found dead in the woods." Within days of this appearance at the committee, that's exactly what happened.
Damn.
Coincidentally or otherwise, Dr. Kelly had predicted his own death. Found in woodland close to his home, he'd apparently committed. But for some, things didn't quite add up. For example, how did he cut his left wrist when friends say he had a damaged right arm? How did he take 29 tablets when he had an aversion to swallowing pills?
Damn.
And why were there no fingerprints on the knife that he used?
Damn.
Cause of death.
So hold on. The guy couldn't use one of his arms and ended up self-deleting himself. He had an aversion to pills and ended up taking 9 pills. And then also the knife that they said he used to slash his wrist, there weren't any of his fingerprints on the knife. But somehow he self-deleted himself. Crazy.
Was bleeding from incised wounds to the left wrist, which Dr. Kelly inflicted on himself with the knife found beside his body.
Lord Hutton's Iraq inquiry was satisfied Dr. Kelly had bled to death. Medical experts disagree, especially as an inquest into his death was started but never finished.
Never finished. They wanted to do an autopsy even on this guy and ask questions, but somehow that was stopped as well too.
The usual process through the coronial system, which works, generally speaking, extremely well, very experienced people involved in it. But the proper and in-depth investigation into the circumstances of this death were not performed, and that's why we believe there should now be a proper inquiry into those circumstances.
Which experts believe could prove finally that it was inconceivable the 59-year-old could have bled to death.
I've never spoken since the death was announced and the cause of death was announced to a single doctor who has found the cause of death as presented to be credible.
And that's the thing, though. Nobody believes any of these deaths of these gentlemen that I discussed tonight. The last gentleman, we all know, definitely did not commit involuntary self-deletion. This gentleman, you all know. We're going to continue on. It's right after she talks here.
And I have never come across, and I don't know anyone who has come across, death.
Some breaking news right now. Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life while he was behind bars here in New York City. Epstein was facing sex trafficking charges. NBC News investigative correspondent Tom Winter now has the very latest. Tom, what more do we know?
Peter, what we know now is that at 6:39 this morning, the fire department and EMS here in New York City got a phone call from MCC, which is a federal detention facility here in Manhattan in New York City, where Jeffrey Epstein was being held awaiting trial. They took him to New York's downtown hospital. He was in cardiac arrest, and he was pronounced there. What we know from officials that have been briefed on what happened, he was found and appeared that he had hung himself in his cell or wherever he was being held within MCC, and he was found by prison officials this morning, and that's when they reached out and they called EMS in unsuccessful attempts to revive him. So that happened.
And that's the thing, though. I'll talk about it a little bit. In prison, when you are locked up, or in jail, we have suicide watches that happen. And people are supposed to be journaling this or logging this. This goes on a record. And if somebody messes up, they begin what's called a 601. It's an investigation that happens. And then they find out who was on duty to record this as a recorder. I mean, they don't call them a recorder. They just do this. This is a part of like their journal logbook, things that people document. And then not to mention this, but you're supposed to have video rolling at all times. So where a sergeant or somebody else in the chain of command can pull this and then review it should anything happen, because they don't want to. And the reason why is because the state or city wants to prevent lawsuits. And one way of doing this is to cover our ass to make sure that these things are documented. Documentation is extremely important. Now, how this guy ended up killing himself, I don't know how. You have video rolling, you have documented logbooks, you have officers, eyes on the ground, boots on the ground, people that are supposedly watching, yet somehow this guy ended up deleting himself. You know as well as I do that people can be placed on suicide watch. We've watched enough movies to know this. Yet somehow this guy was successful, right? That's why I'm calling this whole episode involuntary self-deletion, because that's what this is. Let's be honest here and actually say what it is. This guy did not end up hanging himself. Somebody had to have done this for him, right? Because if you have if you're supposed to have a watch, if people are on these watches to make sure they don't self-delete themselves, well, I should be hearing about how people got fired. I have not heard that at all yet. Maybe it's because people cooperated. Who knows?
Happened early this morning, and right now what we're trying to do is figure out if he was still on suicide watch, because there was an incident that occurred several weeks ago where he injured himself. It wasn't quite clear if that was an attempt on his life, an attempt to perhaps stage an attack. The details of that were never really kind of hashed out, if you will. So this morning there's some significant questions on how somebody who, it was such a high-profile defendant, somebody who had connections that went up to a current president, could be found.
Okay, I have to stop this podcast because something just came up right now that's really troubling to me. And I want to show this to you guys right now so you guys can see how serious this is. I just got a notification from YouTube. This is terrifying. And I'm going to actually show this on the screen right now. Like I don't have fear. I'm not shaking, but I have to show you guys this right now. Bear with me as we put this on the screen. Thank you guys for your patience. This is what was shown to me. Let me put it on the big screen, actually. Hold on, here we go. Let me kind of increase this real quick so we can see this. This was just sent to me now, right? 1 minute ago, it says 1 minute ago. This is what YouTube sends me right now. Hi there. We're reaching out because members of the YouTube community, including fellow creators, viewers, or staff, have expressed concern for your safety or well-being after coming across content you posted with topics relating to blank in self-harm or eating disorders. Video, The Horrors of Involuntary. I even edited this. If you or someone you know is struggling with blank thinking, self-harming, or eating know that there is help and you're not alone. It's not uncommon to turn to, self-deletion thinking and self-harm as ways to cope with painful emotions. Talking to someone can help you process these emotions as well as get support through a difficult time. We encourage you to use the resource listed in our help center if you need support. These organizations, so anyways, we care about you. You're not alone. So the funny thing is, the reason why I brought this on the screen is because I say this, if anything happens to me, I'll even bring myself on the big screen. If anything happens to me, remember I said that before the stream? This is very funny. I'm just going to call it like I see it. What if YouTube sends me this email? Oh, we're just concerned. And then something happens to me. They can say, he was talking about it and he ended up doing this. And we sent him a message saying that, we should advise against it. And what do you know? He did it. Could it be the fact that I'm speaking against people creating hydrogen-powered cars, water-powered cars, and it ended up coming up missing and self-deleting themselves? Jeffrey Epstein hanging himself, allegedly, and these scientists ending up self-deleting themselves after they talk about these things like I am on this podcast. And then I get a message from YouTube. Saying this. You are not alone. We're reaching out because we're concerned that you might self-delete yourself. This is what I'm getting. Like, you see what I'm saying? I'm not saying, like, maybe this was triggered because I mentioned words, and then YouTube genuinely was concerned about my safety because I wanted to discuss this. Or it could be if I come up missing and then floating in some stream face down, or with a pew to my head, holes in my head, and they sent this. Maybe it's because they want to cover their ass. I don't, who knows? All right, let's continue.
And how this could have happened.
Yeah, Tom, you're exactly right. Again, for our audience just joining us right now, NBC News has now confirmed that financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life at a jail here in New York City. We will, of course, be following the latest developments over the course of this day.
We're back right after this.
That's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to discuss this. And the reason why I wanted to discuss this is because nobody wants to talk about everything in the totality. We will discuss things like Jeffrey Epstein, but we won't talk about things like the people before him that ended up challenging systems or ended up trying to leak things or be a whistleblower or invent systems like such as, matter of fact, let me bring this up real quick, or bring up like energy, like free energy, things that threaten, the fuel industry, the diesel industry, things like this. Like, think about this. ExxonMobil is threatened by water-powered cars. All these industries are threatened because of this. This would be detrimental if this Christian scientist comes out with this water-powered car and he ends up self-deleting himself. This is bad. But I wanted to make this a little bit more concise and just dumb this down to an hour because I can go like for 19 hours. There's so many people who committed involuntary self-deletion because of this. And I'm going to conclude this podcast right now by just saying this. I think it's very important to discuss these matters. You know, I just think that a lot of these things should be talked about. And the fact that YouTube is sending me a message saying they're concerned about me self-deleting myself is very problematic when I'm talking about these issues of people who involuntarily self-deleted themselves. If you really think about it, it's kind of terrifying, you know, just crazy. But if you were out there right now thinking about doing this, hold on, I got a message. Real World Radio, to see your live right now, I have to click proceed on a self-deletion topic warning. Yeah, bro. Yep. So I'm getting messages from people saying that YouTube is saying that there's a self-deletion, self-harm topic warning. It's on my video. It's what I'm talking about right now, man. Yeah, so I guess YouTube is sending a warning out to people out there right now before watching this video. It's so crazy. I must have triggered something with YouTube. Hopefully, YouTube, if you guys are watching this, just know that this is for entertainment purposes. I'm not instructing people to do anything. I didn't self-harm myself if something happens days later. None of this stuff is happening. So this is just crazy. I got a message from Discord about YouTube, and then I got a message from YouTube on my Gmail account. Crazy stuff, man. All right, you're not alone. Self-deletion crisis hotline. It was sent to me. Okay. Wow. Yeah, this is crazy. I wanted to talk about the chilling pattern of all this happening. This needs to be discussed, and I wanted to talk about the Epstein issue. This brilliant scientist who made this water-powered car ended up self-deleting himself. The journalist who exposed the CIA bringing in drugs into the country, which was found to be true. The guy was vindicated, self-deleted days later. And then another guy who challenged the system during the Obama administration ended up pew-pewing himself in the chest twice and ended up involuntarily self-deleting himself. This is very problematic. And there's so many warnings that are probably going to be sent because of this video that I'm doing right now. And it's being pointed out to me right now. This is a very sensitive topic, and I feel like I'm walking on a tightrope. Like I said, people are sending me things saying, "Hey, bro, I'm trying to watch right now," and I'm getting warnings about the video that I'm trying to watch. It's crazy. But I wanted to do a stream on this because, of course, there's the horrors of this. But anyways, let's continue. I want to wrap this up real quick and make this really quick. I wanted to make this at least an hour long, but not really go too far over an hour. Because I think if I talk about this topic a little bit too long, I don't want to push the limits of matter of fact, I don't even want to say that. So anyways, I want to conclude this. We spent the last hour walking through the graveyard of inconvenient truths. The graveyard of inconvenient truths and inconvenient voices. Scientists who found the wrong data. Journalists who asked forbidden questions. And we went through whistleblowers who refused to stay quiet. One by one, they were erased. Not with tanks in the street. Not with public executions. But with the cleanest, quietest weapon the powerful have ever perfected. The self-inflicted end that leaves no fingerprints except the ones you're not allowed to see. They call it self-deletion. I can't even say the word here. We call it involuntary termination on this podcast. Because when the pattern repeats this perfectly, same method, same timing, same sudden despair from people who had everything to live for, coincidence dies long before the victim does. The machine doesn't need you to argue or need to argue with you. It simply removes the argument. So tonight, we remember the names they tried to bury. We repeat the questions they died for. And we refuse to let the silence win. So, on one last note, Chad, if anything happens to me, if I suddenly go missing, if I'm found in a hotel room with a note that doesn't sound like me, if my car runs off the road with no skid marks, or if I'm discovered with a pew-pew in my hand that I never owned, not one of my pew-pews, but another one, well, it may be a coincidence or not. You already know which one I believe. This has been the Silence Protocol. Stay awake, stay loud, stay dangerous, because the moment you stop asking questions is the exact moment they win. I'll see you guys next week if they let me. So we're going to conclude this podcast right now. Man, I don't drink, but I need a drink after this. Just covering this. Hopefully my YouTube will still be intact. Who knows? We'll see. Challenging the status quo makes you have questions that you wouldn't otherwise have. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys soon. I'll see you guys next week on the Horrors Of. It's been a crazy podcast so far. So, anyways, Christ is God. You guys stay safe, and God bless.